Fatherhood for the Rest of Us with Brandon Handley. Because you're already great at everything else, why not fatherhood too?
Hey there, and welcome to Fatherhood for the Rest of Us. This is Brandon Handley. I am the creator and founder of Fatherhood for the Rest of Us. I want to say thank you for choosing to spend your time with me today on Fatherhood for the Rest of Us. I also want to just encourage you, if you could, to go over to the podcast on iTunes, download it, subscribe to it, and leave a review if you have found any part of this at all to have an impact on your life. That will help others to find the show and listen to it and get the same type of enjoyment that you are out of it. Also, if you are a father and if you're looking for a place that you can go celebrate fatherhood or perhaps even share some struggles and get some advice or find some like-minded men, I strongly encourage you to stumble on over to Fatherhood for the Rest of Us, the private Facebook group, and ask to join. I'll let you right in. That's going to do it for right now, guys. And please stay tuned for today's podcast. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey there, Fatherhood for the Rest of Us. I am on today with Christian Wiese. He was born in Germany and came to the United States as a graduate student in economics at Brown University. He met his wife at Brown afterwards, starting working as an economist and strategist in the financial industry in Boston. Some 12 years ago, around the time that his boys were born, a mysterious spiritual path opened up to him. While working full-time, he started blogging and released his first book, The Magnificent Experiment, The Magic of Connecting with the Tao, in 2012. In 2017, he retired from the financial industry after working for more than 20 years in 2017. He is now a spiritual author and a coach and lives with his wife and 2 boys in Newton, Massachusetts. Christian, thanks for being on here today. It's a pleasure.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And What can we help you celebrate today, Christian? I always like to start off with something we can help you celebrate.
Well, I'm celebrating an exciting new career for myself. As you mentioned, I've been in the financial industry for a long time. I'm a trained economist.
You've got a PhD, right? You've got a doctorate or a doctorate. It's not just trained. I mean, that's
doctor, yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And I just decided to make this step. I've been writing books, I've been blogging, I've been hanging out with the spiritual community for a while, I've been guiding people, and I just felt it's time to really do this full time, and I'm really looking forward to that.
I think it's awesome. And I mean, don't take any offense to this whatsoever, please, but you've got the, you sound like Eckhart Tolle. Like, so, I mean, you got like the double, you got that going for you. So, I mean, you could kind of like pass yourself off as like his brother or something. So that's a bonus, right?
That's funny. I'd never thought about that.
So you've got that going for you, and that's awesome. It's like a little extra street cred, right? Let's talk about. I read your book. I love the book, and I actually got a question about that. You wrote the book in 2012, and what do you think has changed since you've written the book about some of your ideas and philosophies that were in the book? And can you go back and look at the book and say, if you were to rewrite it today, what has stayed the same, and what may have changed?
Yeah, so it actually turns out I am writing a sequel to it, and it turns out the insights are really the same.
Mm-hmm.
The magic that I try to describe is the same. The magic that many people, I think, see in their lives. The problem is only with the magic, it comes, but then it goes away, and then there are months where you say, "What happened to the magic?" And in a sense, the change that has taken place in the last 10 years is a little bit more experience. You just, in a sense, know when you're fooling yourself. You become a little bit more relaxed.
Okay.
But then when it comes to, when it comes to writing it out, the message always sounds pretty similar.
Right.
But nevertheless, you feel that there's some experience that has taken place, and it gets harder to fool you.
I like that. I like the idea that it gets kind of harder to fool yourself. And when you mention you have that experience and it gets harder, or you wonder whether or not you're fooling yourself if you had that. And one of the things that I want to also bring up, that you and I connected because I'd gone through some type of awakening experience, spiritual experience. I don't, people have a different name for it, but what I found that everybody's got a name for it. So what's kind of interesting is that no matter where you go, this experience exists. And not everybody has that experience. But what was great was that I found out I wasn't extremely crazy. But I reached out. I found the community, and I went through Facebook and I looked for a community. And first of all, I wanted to make sure it was closed because I didn't want anybody seeing what I was posting. But the real crux of the matter was, I said, listen, I'm just curious if anybody has these experiences, and if they had related them or saw some correlation with fatherhood. And that's when you and I connected.
Yeah. And and I really very appreciative of having reminded me of that link, which should be so obvious. All our writing is about oneness. So if there's one place where you should find oneness, it's at your own home. And I certainly had that experience with my children, two boys, one now going on 13, the other 10. And it's pretty much, the awakening pretty much happened around the time when they were born. So there's a strong connection there. And I do have, a couple of kind of spiritual experiences with them that I never really shared, but they are real. So oneness, you absolutely can see in your own family. And I really think you should continue with your mission. I really think you have a message there that needs to be heard. I think it's really important.
I thank you for that. I appreciate that. And again, I appreciate you stepping up, because that was a group of 80,000 people. There must have been at least one other person there. But if not, then hey, 1 in 80,000, and I accept you. What you talk about a couple of the experiences that you had, and you also talk about like this oneness. Do you want to describe the oneness for somebody who may be looking for it?
Yeah, so it's very hard to describe, but take synchronicity. I think many people know the expression. You suddenly look, everybody tells you, 1, 1, 1, 1 is important. And you say, why should 1, 1, 1, 1 be important? But then you look up exactly at that moment, and guess what? The watch is showing you 1, 1, 1, 1. What does that mean? Well, it means, in a sense, oneness, literally oneness. It just means you are connected. You are connected with the people you have that discussion with on Facebook. You're connected with the Apple clock. What is so exciting about this time? It is new that we all have the same time. There was a time when, one watch was 2 minutes fast and one watch was 2 minutes behind. And now everybody has the same Apple time. It's official.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. That would be in our own lifetimes too, Christian. We probably both remember looking down at our watch. And I remember I used to try and trick my grandparents. Be like, well, I don't know. My watch is 10 minutes slow. I'd change it back myself. There was no validation on that.
Yeah, so it's cute. That's what I would call synchronicity. It's cute, but sometimes it's really very meaningful. Suddenly you are guided in a certain direction where it just says, "Look, you want to look at this. You want to follow this particular phone call. You want to follow this particular conversation because you are literally guided to it." And I have thousands of those experiences. And then it becomes very interesting, because then in a sense you say, wow, it's not only cute, but somehow I get guided. What does it mean? Am I still existing as a person? Is it the not my will, but thine, that we all remember from Sunday school? So it's weird. And exactly as you said, when it first happens to you, say, what on earth? What should I do with this?
Yeah, and that is quite literally. I remember, and you're right. I quite literally had that conversation with my wife. I was like, I'm going through something right now. I don't know what it is. What do I do with this?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And there it just helps to hang out with people that are your friends, that you trust. So for example, something very weird. When my journey started, there was somebody I connected with. She was living in Hong Kong,
Hmm.
and we were talking on the internet. And at one point, she was even living here as well for a year in Boston, and it was just amazing. There was always that person where you said, you know what, I have that idea. And then sometimes the person would say, you know what, I think you're fooling yourself. And that is really, really healthy. We need to talk it out, not necessarily in the business setting, because, people may not quite understand where we're coming from, but with those people, with our peers, our spiritual peers, is what I would call it.
Yeah.
And once you do that, it becomes very stable. You no longer really send on wild goose chases.
Agreed, 100%, 110% on that. There was, when it was first happening to me, myself, like going through the experience, it was really destabilizing because you don't know kind of what you never had the experience before, and so I think a lot of people talk chrysalis, from moth to butter, from caterpillar to butter. There's kind of like this phasing that's happening. And, I was fortunate enough to find you to have a conversation with. And I was also fortunate enough to have a couple of the gentlemen to have a conversation with, as well as my wife, and to let it out. And once I kind of got it out and had some conversations and nobody gave me crazy eye, it really smoothed out. It was like just literally just like a little bit of turbulence, and then really nice feeling though. Really, really enjoyed it. So you also, we were talking a little bit before we got going here, and we talked about how I'm viewing. My perspective was finding spirituality through fatherhood, and you had also mentioned that when you look back, that may also have been what led you along your path, becoming a father. You want to go ahead and share with the audience a little bit that perspective?
Yeah, so it might just be a coincidence that my journey started exactly around the time when our sons were born. But then I did talk to my co-author. I just say, I have that. So it's fatherhood, it's not motherhood. But I did say to her, I had that observation. What about you? And she also admitted that kind of her journey also started exactly around the time when her children were born. I don't think it has to be that way. There are some peers of ours who claim that they found awakening at the age of 20. I will not disagree with that, but I think it is. I think it's a pretty big deal if you become a parent. And yes, I do have little stories, with both of the boys. The younger one comes a little bit after me, so sometimes he said things. He's 10. Sometimes he said things where I said, "Wow, where is that coming from?" Those are really psychic predictions. He didn't realize that. In a couple of occasions, I knew the results. I knew he was right. In a couple of occasions, the event hadn't even taken place, and he already told me about it. Huh. So those are the connections that you especially can see with your children, but also with your parents. I mean, there's just a very strong oneness in the family.
What would be some of the things that he would say that would come to fruition?
Well, he did predict the change in my career.
Oh, really?
Ahead of time, yeah. So that was a pretty big deal. I was just smiling. I have a couple of months ahead of time. I was smiling and saying, I haven't yet decided. How do you know? And so he was right there, and things like that. Also had a spiritual experience with my older son, which was really very weird. I was down in the basement. He was just a baby. And suddenly I looked up. It was dark. Maybe it was just sleep deprived and I just all imagined it. But I saw it. Suddenly I saw an old person sitting there. So he was a baby and there was an old person sitting there. It was almost like at that moment I had that impression, this is really the guru from a prior life who now makes his presence known. And of course, those conversations you can't have with your children, but it happened to me, and there are weird stories like that. I've heard other stories like that. I know it's real.
That would now that is really interesting. Now, what is your interpretation of that? Yeah.
I think in terms of fatherhood, I would just say something that I would add. I don't consider myself as an expert on the subject, with the only exception that I'm also a father. But the one idea I would bring to the table is that it's very unclear who is actually teaching whom.
Oh,
is it the
Yeah.
father, passing on the wisdom, or is it actually the child from time to time reminding the father that he's overlooking something? And I think it's really a two-way street.
Absolutely. If we speak to that, I can say that not only do we learn from the children, and the children are teaching us, but they inspire us to go learn more and dig deeper, so that we feel like what we're handing back over to them is more than. But my question was actually directed at what's your interpretation of like the apparition? What's your interpretation of kind of having that vision or having that experience when you saw the old man sitting there, type of thing?
Again, so I, as I said, I was tired. Maybe I just imagine. But quite frankly, I do believe those. The way I put it is, for me, the world is a symbol. Everything is symbolic, and you always can go the one way or you can go the other. Yeah. And that spiritual connection by that time already really believed in, and I do believe very much into the. I believe very much in the soul contracts, so that people are literally deciding to sign up to hang out with each other. And that there are linkages over the lifetimes. Absolutely, I believe in that.
Okay, yeah, I like that. Now, your blog, is it still your blog still going? Have you picked it back up?
I communicate in many ways. I do have a blog, which is the standard Google blog, but also increasingly write a lot in the Facebook environment. So that I think a very nice way to connect with my work. And then, as I said, I do have a couple of book projects also coming for this year, and I'm excited about that.
Okay. I think what's interesting too is like your backstory with that. You became an author and started writing because you kind of took on finance projects, right? You were writing more for the finance world, and here you are now writing for what many would consider the absolute opposite.
Yeah, so it's interesting. The way I think about it is I think about it in terms of people. Mm-hmm. Because when you think about, investors or financial community, it's just smart people hanging out with each other.
Sure.
And the best of the best are the ones where they're really gelling together. Mm-hmm. And what I found so interesting in my journey was that I worked with a team which was incredibly diverse. You had the big thinker, you had the number cruncher, you had an equal split between men and women, you had all nationalities. And it was very hard to get your arms around that. But there is a big thing about diversity. If you manage to withhold the pressure of everybody being so different, there's amazing wisdom that comes out of the crowd. So in a sense, as the years went by, I realized my mission was really to be that connector, to be that in-between. And in a sense, almost you can call it a spiritual experience, because you're literally the glue guy who hangs there and holding the different parts together.
Isn't that what your boss called? Was it your boss or supervisor called you the glue guy?
One of my bosses called me a glue guy, and he was absolutely right. I at that time didn't even know what the expression meant, but yeah, he was absolutely right. And then came writing, and I ran with it.
I love it. So, in your book, you kind of talk about maybe finding your purpose or finding where you're supposed to kind of fit, but almost being pulled along, right? Like where this need to let go of the steering wheel because it may almost be easier in that regard. You want to talk a little bit about that? Like, I mean, like I said, when you and I actually had our first conversation, I don't think you had committed to this this new role that you're doing, this spiritual coach and guide and author. It didn't have the tone that was the direction you were headed. Anyways, just from our brief conversation, would you say then that what since then is kind of have you let go of the wheel? Have you accepted that this is kind of the way you're supposed to go and it's time to stop resisting it now?
Well, so my co-author is very good at this. Her name is Suzanne Yang. And she always says, follow the energy. And I think women are a little bit better in following the energy from internal. For me, it's external. I see things. And then the feeling part comes afterwards. But the big story is when you are guided, there's just a point when the system just knows, no, this is not the right way. Now you go the other way. And it seems very erratic for the outside world. And what do you mean? What do you mean you change careers? What do you mean you become a writer? But to us, it just becomes, we shrug our shoulders and say, it's meant to be. What do you want from me? and it's just what it really is. It's just you follow the energy.
Mm. What has been the response from your family?
Oh, very supportive.
That's great.
Because the nice thing is, I've been kind of announcing that for the last 10 years, so it shouldn't have been a surprise.
It didn't take anybody by surprise, huh? Oh, goodness. What do they call that? I know that it's like beating a drum trying to chase a fugitive, right? Interesting. That's funny. So you're taking a plunge. You are now a spiritual coach and an author. What does it kind of look like? What and who are you attracting, and what do you? Is it case by case, kind of like what you offer, type of thing?
Yeah. So as far as the coaching is concerned, I still kind of have to really find out what it means. Mm-hmm. I've been doing it for a while. My understanding is many people who sign up for spiritual journey really sign up for a healing journey. Okay. So often it is about understanding. So the way I would put it is, all the people who look for spirituality suddenly see something that they don't understand, or they say, "Wow, this is cool. I have to do it." But as I said, then come the months of soul searching where you say, how come that I saw it a few months ago and now I don't? And that's actually very simple. The magic world is always there. It is just sometimes we have blinders on. So the trick is to find out the blinders and to remove them. That is, in a sense, what coaching is all about. And quite frankly, I have to see, but thus far my impression has been it's more, I'm really dealing with peers. I might have a couple of years ahead of them in terms of that. I've seen the movie, but either the journey starts for you or it hasn't yet started. But everybody I work with, people where the journey has already started.
That's interesting. I like the line about finding the blinders and removing them. And this was before we started this conversation. This kind of hot and heavy in my mind these days is it sounds similar to showing somebody to their own greatness, right? And stepping into their greatness. And what I like about your story right now is like you wrote the book. It sounds like you hedged your bets for the past 10 years until you felt comfortable. And being an economic professor, I'm sure like you made sure that you're fine. And now it's like, all right, I'm going to go ahead and step into my greatness. Do you want to talk a little bit about just making that? And I also say it's kind of like standing on the precipice of greatness too, right? So you're standing there and it's like, do I take that step? Do I make that move? And talk about what that felt like to actually step into it.
Yeah. There's always one word that you use, greatness, which of course I love to hear. But very frankly, I also get a little scared hearing it because there's something very confusing about all the masters that you mentioned. You mentioned, Toller as one example. And Sadhguru is a very popular master these days too, and it's very hard to be in that limelight. Very hard, because you're dealing with the energy of millions of people who are projecting into you, and you have to really ask yourself: do you really want to be that great one? Are you able to handle it? And the way I see it, I really am very relaxed about it. Is the way it shows you where you'll end up. You may end up with a network of 100 people, or you may be on television and people know about you as a writer. I have no expectations. I just follow every day the science and see what happens.
I like that. It's funny that so when I say greatness, it's funny because we need to sometimes decide what the word means before we decide to use it, right? Mm-hmm. So we say, you and I decide that greatness for me just means somebody accepting that they're more than just kind of the person sitting in the chair. They have more to offer. They can help change lives. And that's all that you need to be able to do, I think, to step into your greatness. And I'm sure that it doesn't mean to me that you need to get all the way up to Sadhguru level, and it doesn't mean to me, it doesn't mean that. It just means that, like, hey, you've got your small group of people who are looking for you desperately, and you made yourself available, right? That to me is kind of what it means to step into your greatness. Or there's so many different ways to look at it, but I wouldn't say that stepping into your greatness means that you've got to. It's a lot like like I guess Buddhism, right? Everybody's got it within them. Everybody's got the potentiality or whatever. Everybody is already. It's just recognizing the self nature and all that. It's just accepting that that's who you are and being willing to move forward with it. And that's what I think. That's where I'm at when I talk about stepping into your greatness.
Yes, and I have a couple of ideas to that. So first of all, I would mention, when you do listen to some of the masters, they are incredibly comfortable. They can deal with the energy of millions, and they are authentic. I mean, you feel it. Mm-hmm. But I guess something that I've observed, and that goes back to the idea of the glue guy, the work of a light worker is interesting in the way that when you do awaken and when you see how things work, you realize that those people who are in the limelight are not the only ones who are great. There are people behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
Who are absolutely necessary for the operation. It's just our modern world doesn't see that. But once we go down that path, we suddenly start seeing relationships very differently than it's perceived the way that we grow up experiencing it.
No, that's good. I like that point there. And that brings up another. Everybody expresses their greatness in a different way, and that's what you're saying here. So it's just because you're not the guy up there in the limelight doesn't mean that you're not great. You're expressing your greatness in some other way, and again, you're helping somebody else out there. So I love what you're doing, man. I love. I really do. I enjoy the book, and I certainly. I think you had mentioned to me before I read it, you're like, oh, well, there's really not going to be anything that you don't already know. That's not really true. I got to read your story, and I got to know a couple other angles and perspectives that are helping me forward. So, the book, the book was absolutely, it's a great, quick read, but fun. And, your writing style is nice and clean, and you have the good stories that back everything up. So I enjoy that. And I'm sure that your second one will be awesome as well. I'm definitely going to be curious to see how that catches up. Now, let's flip it over a little bit over into fatherhood. And I want to say thank you for tuning into this podcast, and I hope that you're truly enjoying the guests that I have on today. I also want to make sure that you are aware that Fatherhood for the Rest of Us offers personal one-on-one coaching. If you are a father out there who's been afraid or don't know what the next step is to take for you and your ideal version of life, reach out to me. Let's have the conversation. We'll see if you and I are a good fit. And if you are, I just want to help you. I want to serve you and get you to where you want to go, right? I'm not trying to get you from A to Z. I just need to help you to get to your next step. And if I can help you do that, man, it's going to be amazing. And you'll see that you'll be up and running after those first couple of steps. If you are ready to take that next step, then head on over to reconstruct.brandonhanley.com and pick a time. There's a few Pines hostels available. If you don't find something that meets your timeline, reach out to me via email, brandon@fatherhoodfortherestofus.com, and let's have that conversation. We'll see if it's a good fit. I want to help you get to the level that you want to get to. Itself, what, and I'm going to ask my regular questions because everybody gives a different answer, and that's the best part about it. What does fatherhood mean to you, Christian?
Well, it's life-changing. It's hard to imagine how you deal with life and with middle age and with aging without children. And I presume that for those people, they find meaning in something else. They find their little baby in a different way. And I'm sure, but for me, given that this has been my past, I just say, you literally perceive the world through now more than two eyes. And I think that's what fatherhood to me is all about.
That's cool. Being able to see through their eyes. Very nice. Now, what about the relationship that you had with your own father?
Yeah, so that's for me a very difficult subject. My father was sick. He had bipolar, so he was depressed for long periods of time. He was very inward-looking. So I have his sharp mind. I don't reach his levels, but I've gotten some of his sharp mind. But he was very introverted, really living in his own world. He was depressed, and that's sad. I feel there's so many conversations I would have loved to have with him, but I just didn't. It also didn't help that for the last 30 years I've been living here in the U.S. and he was in Germany, and he passed away a couple of years ago. So, So yeah, for me, unfortunately, that has. I mean, this is kind of a sad subject, but yeah, it is what it is.
Yes, sir. No, well, and I'm sorry to hear that he passed, sir. I'm sorry to hear he's passed. What is even through his bipolarism, what are some of the things that he did that you may think of as good or great that you've carried forward into being a father yourself?
Well, something about my household is, talking to people who struggle, and kind of only in retrospect realized what kind of blessing it has been. In my household, when I grew up, there was really unconditional love. Never ever would you have questioned that from your father, from your mother. I mean, otherwise we were a normal family. But in the meantime, I realized you can't take that for granted. Sometimes you have households where some people just question that unconditional love. Otherwise, there's just always been a serenity about him, a certain, a certain wisdom about him that he kind of has inherited, that I've kind of inherited, and for that I will always be grateful. He was really an amazing man. The story that I always tell about my father, so his little hobby was chess, and when I grew up, he literally played with me blindfolded, and he beat me. I mean, can you imagine?
That's awesome. That's a great story. That's a great story. That's it's fun on so many levels, especially when you're doing the whole spirituality and being driven too, and it's fun on a lot of levels. Yeah. Fun story on a lot of levels. What you wrote down quite a few books in the back of your book for reference points. What would you say has been a book that's had the most profound effect on you as it relates to parenting or fatherhood outside of the Bible? Because I also saw that you do some Sunday schooling, and that one always ranks up there. But outside of that,
that on fatherhood, that would be hard. I thought you would now ask me about spirituality. Fatherhood would be hard for me to say. I mean, just to throw out a name, somebody whose writing I've really enjoyed is Erich Fromm. He was a psychologist, and the kind of wisdom that came out of him is just mind blowing. So if you ever have some time and just to pick up a book of Erich Fromm, it's just an amazing author. Otherwise. So the last name is, I might not pronounce it the English way, it's the German way. So Fromm is his last name. Eric is his first name, Erich in German. Okay. So amazing writer. And otherwise, so I'm not answering your question in terms of fatherhood, but in terms of spirituality. For me, the big thing was I studied for years, because for me, the big question really was, all that stuff that we learned about Jesus Christ, was it real or was it just made up? Was it just the church?
Well, I'll tell you what, I have a question about that for you too then, since we're landing on it. You taught Sunday school, but you also make a lot of reference to the Bhagavad Gita. I didn't really see too much, I get, but I saw a lot of reference to the Bhagavad Gita, and you referenced the Bible quite a bit in your book, and you may have referenced others. How do you feel about kind of blending all of those stories, and what is your take? Where did you land on, is this all real, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So a great question, and I essentially what I enjoyed was I enjoyed reading about some of the recent masters coming out of India, because they lived 100 years ago. Those people, or 150 years ago, those people. They were real. They came to the US, they talked. Vivekananda talked about Sri Ramakrishna. There's some other gurus that lived in the 50s. And when you read about it, you then suddenly realize, yes, it's all real. It's all real. We don't need to doubt whether the church manipulated the writings and whether everything about Jesus Christ's life was right or wrong. But there is a metaphysical world out there which is real. We have proof. And then I stopped. I said, okay, good. So now I can go and work. It's problem solved. And then 10 years later, the story continues. Somebody knocked on my door and said, yeah, it's real, but now please do something with it. You can't just say somebody else did it. So This was kind of my my little fun research project.
That's fantastic. It's how do you determine? I mean, what makes it real for you?
Well, the real events, real people, real connections. So I'm a big believer in connection. Meet life. I think some problem that some of us spiritual travelers have, myself included, we just need to force ourselves to face life, because that's where the music is playing. Otherwise, we live in our own world. You have to be very advanced to be really always listening to spirit if you're by yourself. But if you're dealing with people, and it can even be at work, and even people you don't like, they have a message for you. All you have to do is to listen. Yeah. So that would be my advice to everybody, including the spiritual community. Go out, meet life. Life has always an answer for you.
It's funny, and that was something else that was in your book, is that somebody's always got a message if you're looking for it too, right?
Right.
And I find that to be incredibly true myself. Is any time that I've kind of got these questions or thoughts, the answer kind of appears, and or just a random lesson will show up, and you take it. I find my kids watch cartoons all the time. I find lessons in the cartoons that they're watching. I'm sorry, but it's true. So I mean, and maybe they're not intentionally that deep, but that's where I find it sometimes. And I think that as long as you're seeking, you'll what is it? You seeking, you shall find, type of thing. I got blown off a track on that one.
Let me just give you a big compliment, for all the work that you're doing and all those talks that you're having and so forth. I mean, you are definitely meeting life, and just keep doing it. I mean, it's great. The world really needs people like you.
I appreciate that. We go at it together. I believe, and that's it's really just. The paths that we get to cross by going out to meet life is really, really quite amazing, and it's a fun journey, and I'm enjoying it to be sure. To be sure. Dang it, I had it. I lost it again. um, what what is one thing? I know that you kind of got put back on your spiritual journey through your children, but what is something else that you might want to thank your children for? Say 10 years goes by, what is something you'd like to say thank you to them for?
Well, I'm a big believer in one day at a time. I will tell you in 10 years from now. I have stopped thinking about the future because it always comes differently than I think. But it's always as exciting as I hope it is. So I'm sure they will continue to have big messages for me. But I'm just so grateful for those 10 years. I mean, they've been magical. And yeah, if there's anybody listening in, wondering about fatherhood, I think it's really important. It's really important.
It's big. It's big. It's big. What is like? Do you have anything that you wish you would have known before starting fatherhood that would have made it easier if you'd known it earlier?
Yeah. So again, my spirituality starts acting up. In the past, I always used to do a lot of those thought experiments. Oh, had I only, and I could have and should have, and I've completely stopped doing it. I'm now the biggest believer in the past is sacred. Do not change a thing. If you're ever given the experiment, somebody has invented the time machine, and somebody says, "Here is the button, push it. You can go back 10. Don't do it.
Don't go."
As Leibniz, one of the German philosophers, used to call it the best of all worlds. We live in the best of all worlds. The past always happened for a darn good reason. Now that, of course, means you better learn your lesson and in the now do way better than you did in the past.
I like it.
Don't question the past.
Huh. I like that too. I like it. What is there anything that you would like to share with the audience or the group that we haven't touched on yet as it relates to fatherhood?
Only the uplifting message that there's nothing better in the world.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool experience. And like I said, you had hit on it earlier. Maybe somebody in their 20s says they found a light man, or maybe they've been awakened then. And I kind of look at fatherhood as our second chance if we missed that first boat. Our opportunity. I didn't have children until I was older, and I'm glad that I did, because the person that I could have turned into, I'm glad I'm not that person. I'm really glad that my children showed up and have shown me a different path. And without them, to have been there for me and be the guiding light or whatever, making that experience happen, I don't think that it would have happened. So I think of fatherhood as a potential gateway towards that path. Sure. If we haven't already made it there.
Sure. The word that I would use is sacred. When it comes to your own father and your own mother, I mean, the Old Testament always told us rightly, this is a sacred bond. But in the modern society, sometimes, I will not go over Thanksgiving. I was so annoyed last time. We sometimes do it. but with our children, it's sacred, because we know deep down inside they're us. We have to, whenever our children have a message for us, we better listen to it, because it's us talking to ourselves.
Right. And gosh, I could definitely go on and on about that. When you say sacred though, what are you saying when you say sacred?
Well, it's a little bit like the spiritual path. It's just something where you say, there's no alternative.
There's no alternative.
You talked about different choices you could have made or so. There's in the spiritual community, sometimes you may have heard the expression, the the TINA, the TINA principle. There is no alternative. TINA.
I've never heard that before. That's why we're having this conversation.
Yeah, and this is what spirituality is all about. It's just that sacred bond, and you cannot go against it.
Okay, perfect. Where can people go and find you?
Well, I think the best way to connect with me is on Facebook. So Christian Wiese, and there are a few Christian Wiese on Facebook. Next to me, there's always the yin and yang symbol, which is very easy to identify. So connect with me on Facebook. I write a lot there. I do have a blog on Google, as I said. Can connect there. But in the meantime, whatever I write there, I also write on Facebook. And I'm a big believer, and I will stress that in my next book. And I'm so grateful what you're doing here. I'm a big believer in the network. I really want to have a network of people that are all peers, that are all, exchanging notes, because we're all on different paths. Right. Just because I see synchronicity doesn't mean the next person needs to see synchronicity. Maybe some of my friends see fairies in the forest. Do not rule out the fairies in the forest.
Do not rule them out.
So, and it's just exciting. We have that network, modern technology. We have that network of people connect with each other and know what the others are about, meet from time to time. And that's my vision. And I think this is cool. I think technology is outside. It will get even weirder. And 10 years from now, we have 3D holograms, and we'll be sitting together in the living room. And this is just the beginning.
Right, it is just the beginning. I had one more question that I jotted down before. I know you've already given your sign off and everything like that. One of the things that I have a question about is like when you kind of have these visions, when you realize that or you realize something's happening in your life and it's spiritually supposed to happen, and maybe unexpected. Do you write them down? Do you keep kind of like a catalog or notes on these things that are happening to you, and how does that impact?
Yeah. So I would give to many the advice: have a blog, because it is so helpful. And so what I enjoyed the most about my blog is sometimes I have visitors who dig out a note 8 years ago. Huh. And I look at it and say, wow, that was really good. And if you do this, there is a certain continuity. And I would just recommend everybody, and I have a little notepad or iPad or whatever you have, make daily notes, put them together. It's amazing what you come up with if you do this for a year or 5 years. It's really amazing, mind-blowing.
Right. And that was actually one of the first things you recommended to me when I was like, hey, I'm going through this. And my head was like, whoa. So, hey, write the things down that you're feeling now, because you're probably going to forget them. And, when you're in the thick of it, you're like, how the hell am I going to forget this?
I know.
But it goes away. And it's funny because I want it back. Right. It's like, I think you talked about, you lose connection with it for a little bit and you're like, well, where did it go? Where did it go?
But it always comes back. And in a sense, somebody, one of my friends, when I told her about the vision, and she's a psychic, and she just says, you're here to give people hope. And I think she was absolutely right, because all I'm really saying is, once somebody is knocking on your door, it will never go away. You can postpone it. You can postpone it for a month. You can postpone it for 3 months, but don't do it because it's really painful. You might as well, once it starts knocking, you open the door and you go and run with it.
Run with it. Christian, thanks again for showing up today. Really just enjoyed the conversation. I appreciate you being there for me when I needed to have that conversation, and definitely for stepping up into, like I keep saying, your greatness. I know that a lot of people are going to be able to benefit from reaching out and working with you.
Well, thank you so much for this talk. That's been really great.